Hello, good evening, all of you. Welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy, the Hindu News Analysis. So today is 3rd May 2024 and we have few important articles for today's discussion. So without delay, let's start our discussion. So before discussing them, try to solve yesterday given practice question. You all know that yesterday I've given one practice question. The question was, consider the following statements about the Nilgiri Tar. It is listed as endangered species by IUCN. It is an endemic species in Eastern Ghats and it is a state animal of Kerala. Please understand, Nilgiri Tar is not a state animal of Kerala. It is a state animal of the state of Tamil Nadu. So therefore the third statement is clearly incorrect. So therefore you can eliminate option D and option C. And if you look at the second statement, it is an endemic to Eastern Ghats. So this is also incorrect because it is an endemic species in the Western Ghats but not Eastern Ghats. So therefore statement 2 and statement 3 are incorrect and we left with only one single statement, that is statement 1. It is an endangered species of the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. Now if you can briefly understand about this Nilgiri Tar, so this is very important from the exam perspective. Project Nilgiri Tar, it is actually a project that was launched by the Tamil Nadu state government. It aims to restore the fragmented habitat of the Shola grasslands, because the habitat of the Nilgiri Tar is a Shola grasslands, and the project Nilgiri Tar of the Tamil Nadu state government essentially aimed to restore the fragmented habitat of this Shola grassland. So in this Shola grassland, this particular animal thrives and reintroduce the tar population in its historic habitat and ensure proper rehabilitation facilities of the project are some of the objectives of this particular program. So about the Nilgiri Tar, so it is only mountain ungulate in southern India among 12 species present in India. So in fact it is an endemic species that specifically found in the Shola forest or Shola grasslands of the Western Ghats. Now if you can look at the population of this Nilgiri Tar, the population has been estimated to be around 3,122 in the wild according to the Worldwide Fund for Nature 2015 estimates. And in fact it is endemic to the Western Ghats and locally known as Varayadu. So the Nilgiri Tar population is locally called as Varayadu population and it has been facing a wide variety of threats. Now what are those threats? So the threats include a large part of the population of Nilgiri Tar has been wiped out from its historic range or from historic habitat in the Western Ghats. So that is Shola grasslands. Shola grassland is a historic habitat of the Nilgiri Tar, but the fragmentation of the Shola grassland is one of the challenge for the existence or for the conservation of Nilgiri Tar. In fact, fragmentation of the existing Shola grasslands is a main challenge with respect to the conservation of existing limited population, and they have been facing problems like habitat loss and even hunting as well. So these threats must be observed to maintain the stable populations of Nilgiri Tar and also prevent them from the threat of extinction. And I have already told you that this is not the state animal of Kerala. Nilgiri Tar is a state animal of Tamil Nadu, and if you look at its IUCN status, it is endangered in nature. And briefly talk about this Shola grassland. The image that you are seeing here are Shola grasslands. And these Shola grasslands are actually tropical montane forests and they found in the upper reaches of India's Western Ghats. Right? Since they are tropical montane forests and Western Ghats also lie in the tropical regions. So therefore these Shola forests or Shola forest grassland, they are found on the upper reaches of the Western Ghats. So the mosaic ecosystems is native only to the southern Western Ghats and found in high altitude mountains of Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. So these Shola forests essentially found in few states only across the Western Ghats. They are Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and then Karnataka. So these are some details with respect to the Nilgiri Tar. So the next practice question for today is, which of the following best defines the causes of demand pull inflation? Now, if you look at the inflation is generally the increase in the prices. However, inflation is being caused by two different factors: cost push inflation and then demand pull inflation. So these are two types of inflation that actually affect the prices of goods. Now, which of the following accurately describes the demand pull inflation and its meaning is the question. A decrease in the money supply coupled with an increase in the aggregate demand. An increase in the money supply coupled with a decrease in aggregate demand. Option C, an increase in aggregate demand that exceeds aggregate supply. A decrease in the aggregate demand that exceeds the aggregate supply. So please answer this question in the comment section. I'll be giving you the correct answer in tomorrow's lecture for this question. So the first article that with which we have been starting this discussion is with respect to illegal mining in Aravalli range must stop. So this is one of the Supreme Court's pronouncement with respect to the illegal mining in Aravalli Ghats, right? So illegal mining not just in Aravalli range but anywhere is actually a threat to the native ecosystem as well as the wider flora and fauna. Why? Because the illegal mining actually leads to the fragmentation of the existing habitat. Not just fragmentation of the existing habitat, it causes a widespread deforestation. Deforestation especially at an unsustainable scale, and at the same time it could also potentially reduce the revenues for the government. That is also another concern, because when illegally mining has been taking place, that could potentially reduces the revenues for the government as well. And so severe consequences of this illegal mining is on the flora and fauna and existing natural ecosystem and the natural resources. And illegal mining is also one of the major source of contamination or pollution of the existing natural resources. Now, if you look at the Western Ghats, imagine that this is the map of India, and Western Ghats are actually one of the oldest mountains that we have. They're located along this area. Okay, so they extended up to Delhi, and they are one of the oldest fold-in mountains in India. So however, these Aravalli mountains have been facing the threats like illegal encroachment, illegal mining, large-scale deforestation, urbanization. So all these factors have been gradually eroding the Aravallis and their nature. So keeping this in mind, the Supreme Court recently said the illegal mining in Aravallis must stop. So Aravallis are majorly located in the Rajasthan. Now, in this context, please understand what exactly is the illegal mining. So illegal mining means that extraction of minerals, ore, and other valuable resources from either land or from water bodies without the necessary permits, licenses, regulatory approvals from the government authorities, right? So we have a wide variety of resources, and if we wanted to acquire those resources, either the government or the private companies wanted to acquire those resources, so we must require the permits, licenses, or the authorization from the government. But if we start acquiring those mineral resources without the permits and licenses, so that can be categorized as illegal mining, and this is what has been happening in the Aravalli mountains. Now, why Supreme Court has said that illegal mining in Aravallis must stop? So there are certain reasons which have been indicating the importance of Aravallis as a physical barrier, right? So if you look at the Aravalli mountain ranges, Rajasthan government considering only those mountains so which were 100 meters or more in height as part of the Aravalli range, and they did not rate shorter hills as part of the Aravalli range. And this is where the problem actually comes. If the government not considering the shorter height mountains which are less than 100 meters, so how can we ensure that, or how can we protect these Aravalli mountain ranges which are less than 100 meters of height and illegal encroachment, and at the same time the illegal mining would also takes place in those mountains which are less than 100 meters of height within Aravallis, because the Rajasthan state government does not consider mountains which are below 100 meters as part of the Aravalli ranges. So in these mountain ranges which are actually part of Aravallis, there will be a higher scale illegal encroachment and at the same time illegal mining are takes place. They usually takes place, and that have been eroding the natural characteristic, or the ecological characteristics of the Aravalli ranges. So that is where the problem actually comes, because when the government not extending the legal protection to Aravallis or the ranges which are less than 100 meters, then it could further encourage rampant and illegal encroachment, at the same time illegal mining, coupled with various negative consequences on the environment and on the local populations living in the vicinity of those areas, and on the revenues of the government as well. Okay, so revenue aspect would gets impacted, and local people would also gets impacted, and at the same time the ecosystem would also be threatened by illegal and rampant mining. And in fact, if you look at Aravalli mountain ranges, so these Aravallis are only geographical feature that stops dry winds coming from the or coming to the Gangetic plains. And in fact, these dry winds come from the Afghanistan and Pakistan. So again, I would try to draw the map of India here. Okay, so somewhere in this part we can see the Aravallis. Okay, not this part. Somewhere in this area we can see the location of Aravallis, and this is the region where the Gangetic plains are actually located. So Aravallis are actually the only physical barrier that they stop the entry of dry winds from Afghanistan and Pakistan entering into the Gangetic Valley. So if they enter into the Gangetic Valley, this particular fertile Gangetic Valley would turn into a desert. So thereby protecting the rest of the Indian subcontinent from the large scale desertification. So we must understand the importance of Aravallis in this context. And in fact, Aravallis are also considered as the natural barrier, because see, so this is how Aravallis are actually acting as a natural barrier. And if we lose Aravallis, or if we gradually start further destroying the Aravallis, we actually invite the arid and dry climate enter from Afghanistan into Pakistan. So through illegal mining, through encroachment, through deforestation, through quarrying, if we start destroying the Aravallis, we are actually inviting these arid and dry winds from Pakistan, Afghanistan into the Indian subcontinent. So that would further fuel the process of desertification in India. And apart from that, another historical importance of the Aravallis is that Paleolithic findings in those Aravalli mountains are actually directed the Archaeological Survey of India to protect the site, and which could even be part of a national heritage of our country. So all these factors have been indicating the importance of the Aravalli mountains and the need to protect and conserve the Aravalli mountain ecosystem. So however, what are the issues which are being associated with the illegal mining or encroachment of the Aravallis? So there are certain factors which have to be taken into consideration. Firstly, the illegal mining very often causes the environmental degradation. So how it causes environmental degradation? Because whenever illegal mining has been taking place, it is very often associated with the deforestation without any doubt. A large scale deforestation without any environmental impact assessment, without any sustainability factors are involved in this illegal mining. So all these factors would promote the large scale deforestation. Now deforestation would further leads to the soil erosion, and soil erosion would further contributes to the water pollution. Not just soil erosion, but even the mining itself contributes to the water pollution or contamination of existing scarce water resources. And all these factors would have a chain effect, and that could even destroy the habitat of wildlife, so thereby having a serious ecological consequences on the biodiversity of that area. And at the same time, the local populations and their livelihoods would also gets impacted by this, right? So this is like a multiplier effect on the environment and the local populations and their livelihoods because of the illegal mining. And after that, we need to understand certain hazards which are being posed by the illegal mining. So because the illegal mining very often associated with the use of certain hazardous chemicals. For example, they can use mercury and cyanide. So they are very harmful for the human health and dangerous for the human health, right? So these chemicals can pose a serious health risks to miners and even the nearby communities. So thereby health of the communities who are living in the vicinity of the illegal mining would get severely impacted. And after that, it will also have a hit on the revenues of the state government. For example, if state provide licenses or permits for any person who wanted to mine legally and extract resources, that could earn government potential resources. But illegal mining very often leads to the loss of revenue for the government, because the miners may not pay the appropriate taxes and even royalties to the government. That leads to the loss of revenue for the government. And apart from that, it is also reported that the human rights violations are one of the common factor in these illegal mining, because illegal mining can result in human right violations, including forced labor, child labor, and even the exploitation of the vulnerable populations. So all these factors are being associated with the illegal mining. And because of the importance that is being involved with respect to the Aravalli mountains, the Supreme Court asked to immediately stop the illegal mining, and state government expected to take a proactive measures to stop the illegal mining. Not just stop illegal mining, but also prevent the illegal mining that has been destroying the Aravalli mountain ranges. So next important news article, certain way forward is also given. Way forward is that we must update the regulatory and policy framework by passing Mines and Minerals Development and Regulatory Bill, and we should also have the policy and legislative interventions to prevent illegal mining. And at the same time, we can bring transparency in granting permits to the miners. And at the same time, we can set up the interdepartmental body for the speedy clearance. And in order to curb or prevent the illegal mining, what we have to do, we must set up, or we must collaborate. The interdepartmental, interministerial, center-state collaborations are very, very important to prevent the illegal mining. And the illegal mining activities should also be immediately reported to the concerned authorities, so that the authorities can take an immediate action. If necessary, each state government can pass a separate legislation that curb the illegal mining in those sensitive areas, especially like Aravallis. And at the same time, we must throw open commercial mining of coal to the private sector, announce a policy that actually balances mining and the environment. So this is also very important. And we must attract the foreign investment and modern technology. Apart from all these factors, we must curb the illegal mining at any cost. We should also bring the modern technologies. So those modern technologies can be able to check the illegal mining by regular surveillance and monitoring. And at the same time, we must involve the local communities as part of curbing the illegal mining, because they were the first responders. And at the same time, reporting those incidents with the help of local communities will help in curbing such illegal mining activities on those sensitive areas. So the next important news article is with respect to the invasive alien species or exotic species. So these exotic species are invasive alien species are actually not native species. They are not native to one particular ecosystem, but when they are introduced in a non-native ecosystem, they actually increase their numbers and they start threatening the native ecosystems. So that is the invasive alien species or exotic species. Now I will tell you one example. For example, Western Ghats is an ecologically sensitive region in the western part of the country. However, if we have introduced lantana, an invasive alien plant species in Western Ghats, so the population of lantana species rapidly grow throughout the Western Ghats and it starts threatening the entire Western Ghats ecosystem, and it dominates all other plant species and destroy the native plant species, and then gradually destroying the ecosystem as well as the biodiversity of the area, and that is known as the exotic species or invasive alien species. Now what is the context of this particular article? So a context is that removing exotic plants from forest areas will help ensure food for wild elephants at Chinnakannal in Munnar. So this Chinnakannal is located in Kerala, Munnar. So we'll understand briefly what are these exotic species. So exotic species are the plants which have been introduced into the area outside of their normal distribution. Okay, so for example, intentionally, unintentionally, or deliberately, if we have introduced any plant in a non-native ecosystem, the number of the exotic plant would start increasing. It start dominating the natural ecosystem or native species, so thereby destroying the competition in the non-native ecosystem and at the same time destroying the ecosystem as well. For example, there are some of the invasive alien species or exotic species such as lantana and Eichhornia parthenium plant. So all these plant species are actually non-native exotic species. So they were introduced in India. For example, imagine that there is an elephant and which actually customized with the local plantation or local flora species, which plants to eat and which plants not to eat. And if we have introduced any exotic plant species in an ecosystem, so if we have introduced such plants, exotic plant species, the elephant may not feed on this particular plant because elephant don't know whether to feed on this particular plant or not. And this exotic plants actually lack the natural predators, okay, because that is new to the ecosystem and it lacks the natural predator, and this is another factor which significantly helps in the rapid growth of these exotic plant species such as lantana, Eichhornia and parthenium. So removing these exotic species such as acacia, myrnaceae, that is black wattle, and eucalyptus from the forest is vital for addressing all these problems. So if we wanted to ensure sufficient food for the animals, we must remove these exotic species, because these exotic species are not the food for the local fauna species, and at the same time they are also destroying the competition within the ecosystem, and they are also destroying the native species, native plant species, thereby depriving the animals the food. However, in many areas in forests, they are actually filled with the exotic trees or exotic plants, and when these exotic plants are actually growing, there will be no competition and they are growing at a rapid pace, and other native plant species are not actually growing in those areas. However, wild animals including elephants were actually not able to move through these areas. So they were unable to move through these areas. If these areas change to natural grasslands, it will ensure food, water for wild elephants. Okay, so if we are able to curb the growth of these exotic plant species, and if we are able to return back to the natural grasslands that were existing and that are actually filled with the native species, then we can ensure food and water for the wild elephants, and that could also significantly reduces the wild human elephant conflict or human wildlife conflicts. So that is largely prevalent, and in fact this Chinnakannal landscape is overrun by Western lantana, so that is also an invasive species, and this particular invasive exotic species inhibiting the growth of other species of plant and restricting access to animals. So that is actually the negative concern being associated with these invasive alien species. So there are certain negative effects as well, because these invasive alien species are capable of causing extinction of native plants and animals. See, once you have introduced these exotic species, they are destroying the native plant species, and they are also rapidly growing, and at the same time they are destroying the existing competition or existing native plant species. Thereby it will lead to the extinction of native plants and animals, because the native animals lack food, and in fact when these exotic alien species reduces the native plants and animals, that will have a direct bearing on the biodiversity, competing with native organisms for limited resources and altering the existing habitats of those ecosystems. And in fact, introduction of these exotic species deliberately, unintentionally or intentionally into an area actually affects the native species of that area, because they might become predators, competitors and parasites in that new ecosystem, and that will cause the extinction of native plants and animal species. However, with exotic species are introduced in a new habitat, the absence of their natural predators cause them to grow unrestricted. Okay, so it actually helps them to grow unrestricted if we are able to introduce so if we introduce these native species in an ecosystem, those native species would lack the predators. Okay, so no one feed on those exotic alien species, and that helps them rapidly increase their populations and destroy the native ecosystem, especially the native plant species, and that will also impact the biodiversity of an area. Now, in fact, the exotic alien species or invasive alien species will have a lot of impact. For example, they destroy the competition, and they will have impact on grazing. They will not have any predators, or they can be predators on the native ecosystem, and they can also perform the function of parasitism, hybridation, biofouling, poisoning of the existing ecosystem, and flammability, disease transmission and interactions with other exotic alien species. Okay, so if you look at the environmental impact of these exotic alien species, so they can modify the hydrology of an area. So how they can modify the hydrology? For example, there are certain species which can extract a lot of water from the ground level. Okay, so from underground there were trees which extract a lot of water, thereby depriving the essential water resources for other plant species. And after that, they can also destroy the native plant or animal species, and it will lead to the soil erosion. And primary production alteration will also take place, because it will have an impact on the food chain. It impacts the food chain and food web, and it impacts the plant and animal health, and also habitat degradation takes place at a rapid pace, and it will also have a huge impact on the biodiversity of an area. However, it also comes up with several socio-economic impacts as well. It leads to the damage of the existing agriculture crops, reduced access to water, infrastructure damage also takes place. It also impacts human health, damage to forestry, and reduction in tourism would also the consequences of invasive alien species into any ecosystem. So the next important news article is with respect to protection of children from Sexual Offences Act. Objective can't be ignored. So this is what the Supreme Court has said. Okay, so this is with respect to the POCSO Act. Now, what is the context of this particular article? See, understand this POCSO Act was passed by the Union Parliament to protect children from the sexual offences or sexual violence. Right, so for that particular purpose, this particular legislation was passed by the Union Parliament. Now, context of this article is that the objective of protection of children from sexual offences act could not be ignored merely because the child marriages continue and abusers marry their minor victims to escape the conviction. Now, understand, in West Bengal, what happened was a minor child was raped. First she was kidnapped and then she was raped, and after that the convict, who is whose age was 20 years, and the convict married the minor girl. So even though the convict married the minor girl who was kidnapped and raped, so we cannot ignore the provisions of Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act under the guise of marriage. So what if after he escaping from this particular POCSO legislation, he may abandon her? Okay, so therefore we must implement the provisions of POCSO Act in letter and spirit, and we must not neglect the objective or ignore the objective of this POCSO Act passed by the Union Parliament, and that is what the Supreme Court has said. Now, who is a child? According to POCSO Act, most laws fix 18 years as the age when one ceases to be a child, and there was exceptions also. So what were the exceptions? So the Majority Act 1875 sets the age of so the age of majority at 18, and in fact 61st Constitutional Amendment Act fixes the minimum age of voting at 18 years. Okay, so earlier 21 years, and 21 years made 18 years in the 61st Constitutional Amendment Act. Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012 and Juvenile Justice Act 2015. So they define child as someone under the age of 18 years. Okay, so both POCSO Act, Protection of Children from Sexual Offences 2012, and Juvenile Justice Act of 2015 defines a child as someone whose age is below 18 years. And in fact, Right to Education 2009 also says that child is someone between the age of 6 to 14 years of age. So child marriage or Child Labor Amendment Act 2016 actually says that a child is someone under the age of 14, and an adolescent is aged between 14 to 18 years, and this is with respect to some of the legal provisions with respect to age of a child in India. Now, what exactly is this Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act? So this act is passed by the Parliament to protect children from the sexual offences, and it was passed in 14th November 2012. And in fact, this particular POCSO Act was enacted in consequence to India ratification of UN Convention on the Rights of Children in 1992. So India ratified this UN Convention on Child Rights, and as a consequence, India passed this Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act in 14th November 2012. Now, what is the aim and the objective of this POCSO Act? So the aim is to address the offences of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse of children. So they are at a very young age, and if any sexual offence or sexual abuse takes place against the children, the POCSO Act and its provisions are being used to impose punishments, penalties on the convict. And at the same time, the Act also defines a child as someone whose age is below 18 years. Any person below the age of 18 years is categorized or defined as a child under this POCSO Act. And in fact, the Act also provides punishment as per the gravity of the offense committed. And in fact, the POCSO Act also have some of the stringent punishments. So because it was reviewed in the year 2019, and this review has provided for some of the stringent punishments for any violation of the POCSO provisions or any offense committed against children. So the stringent punishment even includes death penalty for committing the sexual crime on children. So this is particularly with a view to deter the perpetrators and prevent such crimes taking place against children or people targeting children. And in fact, the government of India has also notified the protection of children from the sexual offences rules 2020 as well. Now, what are the features of this POCSO Act? So it has certain features. So first and foremost, it is a gender neutral in nature. Gender neutral in the sense that it will be applicable for both male and the female, the girl child and boy child. So it is not biased towards the girl child or not biased towards the boy child. Rather, it is equally applicable for both male and female child who is below 18 years of age, and that is a gender neutral legislation. Because this act recognizes both girls and boys as a victims of a sexual abuse. Okay, so such a crime, regardless of the gender, whether it is boy or girl, so regardless of a gender, any act of sexual offense carried out by any person against boy child or a girl child below 18 years of age are treated as an offense under the POCSO Act. And in fact, this is also in line with the principle that all children have a right to protection from the sexual abuse and exploitation, irrespective of or regardless of the gender. And at the same time, ease in reporting cases. So ease in reporting cases in the sense that recently the awareness about this POCSO legislation and its provisions actually increased. So there's a lot of awareness among the people about the provisions of this POCSO legislation, and thanks to social media for that. So therefore, in this context, not just individuals, but also the companies or non-governmental organizations can report any such incidents takes place, or any institution can easily report these crimes against the children. And in fact, if anyone willingly not disclosed any information with respect to such incidents, and such act will also be considered as an offense under the POCSO Act. Okay, so now the general awareness to report cases of sexual exploitation of children is not only by individuals but also by institutions, because non-reporting of such incidents are considered as a specific offense under the POCSO legislation. And this has made it comparatively difficult to hide offenses against the children that have been taking place. And after that, there are certain explicit definitions for vague terms were also provided in this POCSO legislation. The storage of child pornography material has been made a new offense under this particular legislation. Okay, so these are some of the prominent features of the POCSO Act, which is passed for the protection of children from the sexual offenses. Okay, so the next important news article is with respect to an editorial given in the Indian Express. So that was written by our Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. Okay, so the Vishwa Bandhu, as India emerges as a leading power, a multi-pronged diplomacy can maximize patterns and minimize the problems that we have been facing right now. And in fact, we can call the present era as a golden phase of Indian diplomacy, because now we are balancing both East and West, and we have good relations with both Russia and US, and at the same time we are successful in generating enormous goodwill and soft power across different countries, whether it is Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, South Asia. And India is also well known for its generosity and its commitment to peace and non-violence as an ideals. So significantly, India has been becoming a major military power and the economic power in recent times, and further flexing its muscles as well. So what is the context? The discourse on India's foreign policy and its role in shaping overall India's development trajectory is highlighting the recent commentary. Okay, so a vision for Vikasit Bharat. So Vikasit Bharat is developed India. So we wanted to make India a developed country by the year 2047, because 2047 is the year in which we will celebrate 100 years of our independence. So we wanted to become Vikasit Bharat by 2047. So in order to achieve the dream of Vikasit Bharat by 2047, so we must have the political stability and the policy continuity as well. So because political stability and policy continuity will provide much needed confidence for the investors, and there will be flow of the foreign direct investment. The policy stability will also result in rapid economic growth and economic development for our country. So both economic growth and economic development will help us achieve the goal of $5 trillion economy in the next 2 years and rapidly scale up our economic progress. So achieving the goal of Viksit Bharat requires political stability and continuity to implement the long-term policy prescriptions. And this is very, very important. Fortunately, we have the policy stability since last 10 years, and that is a good thing that has been further augmenting India's growth and development. And in this Viksit Bharat, the foreign policy actually plays a very important role, because foreign policy actually determines India's relations with other countries. And if you look at the evolution of India's foreign policy, so we have observed a shift towards prioritizing our national interests, because we keep our national interests at the center whenever we are dealing with any country. If I can provide you the example, purchasing oil from Russia despite the threat of Western sanctions. So at that point of time, we have kept our national interests at the forefront. And at the same time, we have also promoted the multi-vector diplomacy. So that has been, taking shape, and that has been balancing the different interests across the globe, and also asserting the relevance of a foreign policy, relevance of our national interests at the global stage, thereby earning a lot of reputation across the globe. And in fact, India had becoming one of the key players at the international level. So importance of manufacturing technology should also be prioritized, because over a period of time, the economic growth and economic development requires a lot of infrastructure. We need to focus on manufacturing if we wanted to make India an export hub, if we want to create a lot of employment and use existing demographic dividend in an efficient manner. And at the same time, technology will also help us achieve a greater heights. So deepening national strengths, particularly manufacturing and emerging technologies, is crucial for India's development, and that requires a strong international collaboration and effective democracy as well. So those things are very, very important. However, in this respect, the international collaboration and a versatile diplomacy is very, very important. So if you look at India's foreign policy and India's overall strategy, we have adopted the strategic autonomy, the policy of strategic autonomy, and even the national development as well. In a policy of strategic autonomy, and national development. So especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, so after to navigate the post-pandemic world order, nations are seeking the strategic autonomy. Okay, so strategic autonomy in the sense that they would take their own decisions based on the merits and their national interest, and they also seek the self-interest, and they don't want to depend or rely on any other country significantly. And especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, we have followed the policy of strategic autonomy and also self-reliance through the policies like Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. So that could ensure India's economic growth, economic development, and it will also ensure the national security. And after that, the global engagement and talent mobility is also very, very important, because India aims to become a global hub for research, design, and innovation. So since it wanted to become a global hub for research, design, and innovation, so that requires international partnerships, proactive collaborations with different countries, and mobility of agreements to harness Indian skills and Indian talent, thereby using the existing demographic dividend in a very effective manner. And we should also emphasize on connectivity and security aspect also, because India's foreign policy also focuses on enhancing the connectivity and political balances in changing world. So one such example is India Middle East Economic Corridor that was launched during India's G20 presidency. And at the same time, we also have several connectivity projects that are connecting different regions. And we have also been engaging with multiple forums like Quad and BRICS, so that significantly help us further strengthen our security and achieve an edge over the regional rivals, and further improve connectivity to enhance exports, boost trade and commerce, and also further improve the economic growth of our country. So all these factors are very, very important to become Vikasit Bharat by the year 2047. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and also hit the like button. We'll meet again tomorrow. Thank you.